weekend. What a weekend. Started out so well. Anyway, we had an event. As you know, I've got all these cars and I've been collecting for 40 years, I suppose, close enough to 40 years. And it all began with that Morris Minor over there. Wow. That's a 1949 soft top side valve low light Morris Minor. Lovely. Anyway, once you get bitten by the collecting bug, that's it. You've had it. Anyway, one of the things I have to do, of course, is regularly, every few weeks, perhaps once a month, start up every car. Because if you don't do that, the oil drains into the sump, and you have problems with the seals. And if you don't, start her up and pump the brake pedal, you're going to have trouble with your brake fluid, because that absorbs water. Anyway, it's just a process that I go through, and I've been going through it for years. Nothing's ever happened. Come Sunday, I was doing 4 cars, because I don't do them all at the same time. You'd asphyxiate yourself if you did that. But I started up the lovely old Sunbeam Talbot Alpine, and I had my back to the garage, and Christopher was there, my youngest son, and he said, "Dad, there's a lot of smoke coming out of there. You sure that's all right?" And I turned around, and it was clearly not all right. It wasn't exhaust. It was coming out of the cabin of the car. Anyway, I walked over and I had a look and immediately turned the ignition off, and I then went around the front and, as best I could, disconnected the battery. It's got a what do you call those things, Pete?
An isolator?
Isolator? Yeah. So I isolated the battery, which is always a good thing to do. And I said quickly to Christopher, "Get me the garden hose." Now this is a lovely... I think the people I bought it from told me that the original owner spent, well over $100,000 restoring it. It was just beautiful. I hardly ever drove it. Anyway, the thought of turning the garden hose on the interior of that car almost broke my heart on the spot. But you've got to do what you've got to do. There's a fire in there. How, why, we'll find out later, I suppose. Anyway, that didn't do the job, and we were pushing it out, trying to get it out from underneath the roof, because it was in the garage. I mean, God knows what damage that would do. Take out the whole house, probably. Anyway, Christopher took the initiative, called the fire brigade, and the police and the fire brigade very kindly arrived. We got it out of the garage, turned their really big hose on the interior. I haven't had the courage to go and look at it, Pete.
It's still there.
It's still there, yeah. Well, it's not going anywhere, I can tell you that. Dear, oh dear, oh dear. Anyway, I rang the wonderful people at Shannon's, because all these cars are insured by Shannon's. And he said, don't worry, go and have a glass of wine, relax. There's nothing you can do about it today. We'll talk tomorrow. And so that's what we did. Did I say Sunday before, Pete? Because we're recording our programs.
No, you didn't say Sunday, but it was...
No, well, the fire was on Saturday.
Saturday, yeah.
So we'll get things fixed tomorrow. Very upsetting, very traumatising. You go into shock. You really do. Scary. Anyway, Peter Clayton is behind the camera, and he's in one piece because he helped me a great deal as well. And so did Tony Denton from across the road, my neighbour. Anyway, it took a few of us to get the car out of the garage, because you couldn't drive it, obviously. You had to push it out, manhandle it out. Anyway, I got to stop thinking about it. Well, think about something else. We are having Thursday, Anzac Day, off. We're going to take Thursday off, as I think most people will respect the day. I know I certainly do. I wouldn't be here, I have no doubt, without the people who have defended this country and honoured this country in several, 2 world wars, and then there was Korea and Vietnam and everyone plays a part in the wonderful life that we call Australia today, and we must honour them, all of them. And then we'll be back on Friday around the dining room table, jeremycordo.com. Now, the thing I wanted to put to you, Pete and I were talking about it, instead of doing a podcast and a posting on Facebook every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, we were kicking around the idea of doing one a week, because most podcasts are one a week. Some are one a fortnight, but I can't think of any one that's one a day. I'm not a great aficionado, I probably wouldn't know, but I think that most of them, it's fair to say, are once a week. How would that sit with the people who follow this posting? Would you be okay with me doing or us doing a 1 hour posting, say every Wednesday? Or would you rather we kept it to Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and tell me. Or tell me to hang up my headphones and go to hell. Tell me anything you like. I'd love the feedback. I really would. The Age newspaper reports that there's been and I had to check up that I hadn't misread it, a 200% increase in mushroom poisonings in the last 10 years. 200%. And they also say that, without sort of actually pointing the finger, that mushrooms are being imported into Australia without inspection or analysis, and that they do represent a significant danger. There wouldn't be any health warnings on the mushroom products, would there? I think you must regard all mushrooms, but I love mushrooms. But when I go into the supermarket, they're there in the vegetable department, and they look, you know, the really big mushrooms. I mean, they're not magic mushrooms, and I don't think magic mushrooms would find their way into the supermarket mix, would they? Maybe they do. Maybe they do. Best be careful. The biggest demonstration of democracy in the world is taking place, ladies and gentlemen. Narendra Modi, or Modi, I think is the way you pronounce it, M-O-D-I, the Indian Prime Minister. He looks like being a clear winner, but nobody's going to know for about 6 weeks. That's how long it's going to take to count 969 million votes. Get your mind around that. 969 million eligible voters out there. Population, of course, is 1.4 billion. But it's a big year for democracy all round. Half the population of the world, some 4 billion people, will cast their votes before the end of this year. With such a wonderful system as democracy, I find it hard to understand why it is such a war-torn, unhappy place in spots. The IMF says that the world economy is looking pretty good. A year ahead of slow but steady growth. Inflation a bit high, but trending in the right direction. Here at home, a slight increase in unemployment, but nevertheless it's pretty good. Next week, the quarterly inflation figures will be out on Wednesday, much more reliable and indicative than the monthly figures that I usually tell you about. Might be a fraction higher, they suspect, or the economists suspect. The Bondi Junction Westfield Shopping Centre reopened on Friday. Not all the stores opened, of course, their choice. The centre was open on Thursday, but not for retail sales or retail trade. It was just for reflection. A solemn moment, I would have thought. A lot of talk about doing something about knives as a result of Bondi and the attack on the Christian church at Wakeley in southwestern Sydney. But what can you do? What can you do? I think it was 20 years ago when, here in Adelaide, Premier Mike Rann passed a law controlling the sale and the carrying of knives. And I think that law is still around. How well it's policed or not, I don't know. I remember I had a lot of calls on my program on 5DN back in the day of people who said, I'm sorry, I carry an R.M. Williams pocket knife on my belt, and I've done it since I was a boy. And people resented being collateral damage for the evil doings of other people. And you can ban, hunting knives or Bowie knives or something like. People collect those sort of things. But you can ban them, I suppose. But what's stopping somebody running into the kitchen and getting a kitchen knife, which in every sense of the expression is just as dangerous? And in any case, laws are only good for law-abiding people. The crooks, well, they do what they like. Have you heard this, Pete? I think this is really interesting. I don't know what to make of it. This is the story about Bronwyn Bock and Lucy Bradlow. I think it is. Bronwyn Bock and Lucy Bradlow. They want to be Australia's first job-sharing members of Parliament. They want to contest the Melbourne seat of Higgins in the next federal election. They will, if they're allowed to run as one person, a single candidate. Is that possible? Job-sharing candidates. They're both climate catastrophiers, but neither one seems to feel that she can apply her whole self to the job. So they want to share it between them. Now, what happens if there's a falling out between these two? What happens if one votes one way and the other person says, look, I wouldn't have done it that way? I mean, I don't think this is legal, is it? Job-sharing political candidates. We don't have to do that. We just need people who are prepared to apply themselves as representatives of their electorate 100% to the job. There are 1,100 of them apparently flying tens of millions of people around the world every week. The Boeing 787 Dreamliner. Very pretty aeroplane. Very nice to look at. But according to a former Boeing engineer, I guess we could call him a whistleblower, there are inherent faults in this aircraft. Inherent faults in the way the fuselage is constructed. It's constructed and assembled in sections. Boeing say, no, it's fine, it's fine. Well, God, they'd better be right. I don't think they could survive another disaster, particularly when this has now been made public. You know? Gee whiz. It does strike me as a bit odd that you wouldn't build the fuselage all in one piece, but I'm not an aeronautical engineer. There was a time when Australia welcomed 100,000 migrants a year to Australia. Now, I know that Dick Smith and others think that the migrant intake should be around 75,000 a year, just because of housing and jobs and education, hospitals, schools, all that sort of thing. But I tell you what, 100,000 migrants a year. Last month, 105,000 migrants arrived in 1 month. 105,000. Now, the government must know because they have to issue the visas. It's ridiculous. You extrapolate that out, that's 1,200,000, let me think, 1,260,000 migrants a year, about 5% increase in our population every year. That is not sustainable.
It's insanity.
It is insanity, isn't it?
It's absolute insanity.
Every one of us should get in touch with our Member of Parliament and say, stop the insanity. Of course, he or she would say, well, which piece of insanity do you want to stop? Where would we start? Oh, Lord help us. Student or HEX debt is climbing. If you've got student or HEX debt yourself, or you've got kids or grandkids that have got it, it's a burden. It's a considerable responsibility. But this is the problem. The 1st of June, upcoming, based on inflation, the government, with indexation, because they can do this every year, will hike students' debt this year by 4.8%. Last year, it was a whopping 7.1%. That's up 16% since Labor came to power. Just these last, well, it's not quite 3 years, is it? It's less than 3 years. And remember, it was Paul Keating who introduced the HEX thing. But what's the point? What is the point? Based on the American experience, the people who have a HEX debt, and that's where Paul Keating admitted that he got the idea to do it, it's mostly written off or somehow traded away. It's never paid. Most of this debt is never going to be collected. But it's a terrible distraction for kids to have in front of them. You know? I don't know. Have I got time for one more?
Yeah.
Sarah Ferguson, ABC. Sarah Ferguson comes out of an interview on her 7:30 program with the Treasurer. She was talking to Jim Chalmers, in which we heard this from Jim. The pain of getting to net zero is well worth it. 1.3%, which is our contribution to the problem he's trying to fix. 1.3% is not worth the expensive turmoil he's creating, or they're creating. Sarah, sorry, you could have asked him. And no, we don't have to set an example for the rest of the world. No. We elect these people to go to Canberra to look after us, not the rest of the world. Anyway, then she goes straight into a story on Redlands, Moreton Bay near Brisbane, the Walker Corporation's residential development, huge residential development, and you know how much we need residential development. However, it could impact the nearby wetlands. I've touched on it before. Wetlands, the most dangerous contributor to greenhouse gas in the world. The Aboriginals opposed the development, not for that reason. Oh, no. No. The stupid minister, I shouldn't be personal, should I, Pete?
Well, I would be.
Yeah. Well, Tanya Plibersek agreed with the Aboriginals and all the objectors and stopped the development. Sarah, you are all for the economic pain imposed by this crazy net zero crap, but you and the Minister, the Treasurer, and the Minister for the Environment, Tanya Plibersek, don't know that the wetlands contribute 47% of the worst greenhouse gas in the world, methane? They don't know or they don't care, and you are all too incompetent or too stupid, or perhaps both, to make comment on it. It's so counterintuitive and absolutely contradictory. It's just Monty Python-esque, if you like. And let me remind you about one of our sponsors, the lovely Rising Sun Inn down there off Kensington Road. If you give Grant a call on 8333 0721, you let him know that you heard me talking about the Rising Sun Inn, and he'll take really good care of you. But whether you're having a wedding anniversary, you're having a wedding party, a business function of some kind, whatever the function, or a quiet romantic dinner for two, beautiful bar, lovely atmosphere. It's getting cold, and I will bet, I haven't been down there for a while, I will bet the fires will all be on, all be lit, and it'll be as cosy as anything. The Rising Sun Inn on Bridge Street at Kensington, 8333 0721. Great for lunch or dinner. Now, I'll just wish you a happy birthday. It's the 22nd. 1969 was the year, and this was the day. The first human eye transplant was performed. Just so I don't get any of this wrong, I'll put my glasses on, speaking of eyesight. I didn't know you could transplant a human eye. But they've been doing it since 1969. Wow. Henry Royce, English industrialist and automobile founder, Rolls-Royce, he dies at 70. He was just 33. Rolls, of course, I think died earlier than that in a plane crash. What else can I tell you? The Battle of Berlin on this day in 1945. Upon being informed that a planned counterattack never happened, Adolf Hitler flies into a rage, denouncing the German army, and concedes that World War II is lost. Well, that was certainly an understatement. Glenn Campbell, the American Academy Award-winning country pop singer, By the Time I Get to Phoenix. Wichita lineman. Rhinestone Cowboy. You like Glenn Campbell, don't you, Pete?
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Very good. The Glenn Campbell Good Time Hour, he was on television. He was a session guitarist for years. That's how he got his start with the Beach Boys and Elvis Presley and the Monkees and Phil Spector. Anyway, he was born in Delight. I mean, I must be born in a place called Delight.
Delightful. Yes.
Delightful. Born in Delight, Arkansas. He died 2017, born 1936 on this day. George Cole, English actor, Minder, born London, 1925, born in 25, died in 2015. 1925, born in 20, oh God. He was born in 25 and he died in 2015. First military use of poison gas. Ah, dear. Pernicious bloody decision that was. It was chlorine, and it was the decision made by the Germans in World War I on this day in 1915. Terrible, terrible weapon of war. Anne Bonny, the Irish Caribbean pirate and lover of Calico Jack, dies in prison at 85. Now that must have been one wild woman. 1782 was the year. Eddie Albert, the American actor, he was born in 1906. Vladimir Lenin, Russian Marxist revolutionary Soviet leader, born in Russia, 1870. Jack Nicholson, 1937, American actor. One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. The Shining, Terms of Endearment, was born. Tchaikovsky completes his ballet Swan Lake on this day in 1876. And Robert Oppenheimer, the American theoretical physicist, known as the father of the atomic bomb, if I can turn the page and see what else it says, was born 1904. Thank you very much for being with us, ladies and gentlemen. Give me your feedback on whether or not you think it would be okay to do a podcast once a week instead of once every day. And keep in mind, we'll still have our live streaming show around the dining room table where you can also talk to us and we can have guests and music and all that sort of thing. I want to expand that because it has a lot more potential, I suspect, than sitting here in my garage, where it's nice and comfortable and I love it. And But, give me your feedback. I'll be grateful. I'm Jeremy Cordo. Peter Clayton and I'll be back tomorrow. Believe in yourself, and thank you for viewing the Court of Public Opinion.